Good morning, everyone. May 25th, the year 2023. I would like to welcome everyone tuning in to the TJ channel. This is the very first broadcast, and I'm very happy to be here today with you. Okay, first thing I want to get into is the announcement of Ron DeSantis. My my thoughts on this is as a Trump supporter, a person that supports Trump, President Trump, and voted for him twice. I just can't see myself going along with the candidate that the media loves and the establishment loves. And this whole Ron DeSantis thing just sounds fishy. I think he's a Trojan horse, and he's an okay guy. Uh, but being the president of the United States, as we can see from President Trump, is no small feat. And you're going to take a lot of hits. And honestly, I'm just not interested in the media's choice for the people. I feel that the media is upset at President Trump and upset at his supporters because we no longer go along with their propaganda and their brainwashing. And this whole Ron DeSantis announcement is just an attempt to regain the control that they once had. Um, President Trump has united this country, united the different diverse groups of people like no one else, and pretty much no one can compete with that. So that's my thoughts on that. Not interested on Ron. I'll pass. I want the guy that makes everybody cry. That's the guy I want. He makes the swamp cry, the media cry, the rhinos cry. He's perfect to me. And so that's it. That's how we rolling. Okay, so enough about that. We're going to get into the topic of reparations, folks. I know a lot of people on the conservative side don't want to engage in a conversation about reparations, and I think that's a big mistake. I'm an advocate. I'm conservative, and I am an advocate for reparations. I believe it is necessary. One of my personal beliefs is I don't like to take things that don't belong to me. And if someone provides a service for me, I like to pay for my services. If I ask someone to come work for me, that and I owe a debt, I like to pay those debts. So that is the reason why I personally believe in reparations for pretty much anyone that has a rightful claim. Um, let's talk about specifically discussing the descendants of American slaves. Also, aka foundational Black Americans. Um, the case for reparations, I feel, is pretty strong. Number one, we know the past of slavery, of course, and we know about the money and the wealth that was obtained from slavery, that America prospered and America became this super fast world power, super rich overnight, and we know about the people that actually did the labor. Okay, I don't discriminate. I don't believe that slaves were destined to be a slave, and therefore we need to never have to pay them. Um, I don't believe that immigrants are more deserving of work and payment for their work. Um, you know, it's more than just slavery. It's a lot that went on with the Black community, the descendants of American slaves, that has been brought to me by several other people that I speak to. And one of the points that they have made, successful points, was the fact that even after slavery and the unpaid labor that was received, there was the inhumane treatment of the Black citizens for about 100 years during Jim Crow. Black citizens were treated like less than people, like less than humans. on a repetitive basis for at least 100 years. And we're just going up to 1964, the Civil Rights Act. Then let's talk about now, let's see here. Let's talk about Jim Crow. What happened after Jim Crow? Jim Crow 2.0. That is the Jim Crow that happened after the 1964 Act. Immediately after that act was signed, the following year, Congress passed a 1965 Immigration Act in which they lifted um, controls over the numbers of migrants that were allowed in every year, and basically gave out unlimited visas to everyone in the world. And I thought that was a curious reaction to a country that was just reeling over civil rights. So, something had to be in the plan, in the work to counteract the Civil Rights Act of 1964. The black people didn't know what that was. So then we started getting plane loads of foreign nationals from all around the world coming here, students and tourists and etc. But what's interesting about that act and what Congress did was you increased the number of uh, visas allowed in the country, but you did not increase enforcement. So I thought to myself, that's very strange. Why wouldn't you increase enforcement when you have an increase of immigrants? Immigration enforcement should have been increased when immigrants were increased. Immigration was increased, so that was a red flag in 1965. And then let's go to further along, a few years later, 1970. We get all these other immigrants in, which is fine to a degree, but the lack of enforcement made it became more and more prevalent as the years went on. The immigrants soon realized that no one was basically checking paperwork and regulating immigration. So it became a free for all, and everyone passed the word down in their home countries, and that's why everybody got a plane ticket, one-way plane ticket to America. Um, then we had the talking heads on television discussing and pretty much extending constitutional rights to the newly arrived student visa holders, tourists arriving in America. And so now we talk about the 14th Amendment and the talking heads. Part of the propaganda in the media in the 1960s, 1970s, and the 1980s as well was this idea that the 14th Amendment was for everybody, which was quite interesting in my belief. Um, I don't recall any time prior that constitutional rights belong to everyone. It was my understanding that U.S. constitutional rights belong to citizens. Um, it was also my understanding that Dred Scott, the famous case, Dred Scott case, the Supreme Court judge, the Supreme Court ruled that Dred Scott was not entitled to constitutional rights because he was not a citizen, and he wasn't entitled to immigration protections because he wasn't an immigrant. So that's why the Dred Scott case got shot down, and Congress had to create the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments to the newly freed slaves. That was the only path forward for a person that was in slavery in America. Remember, slaves are not immigrants, so they cannot go the immigrant route. Um, Also, one of the things I've noted is that the 14th Amendment, as much as the propaganda they speak on television, it doesn't exactly cancel the Naturalization Act. And that's the act that regulates immigrants. The Immigration and Naturalization Act. It's not canceled by the 14th Amendment. And to do so will be illegal. That is unconstitutional to use one amendment to cancel another. I know this because I've actually read the Constitution, well, some parts of it, most of it, and I've also read the text of the Immigration and Naturalization Act. And that's the law of the land. That's the supreme law for immigrants. So, this notion that the 14th Amendment can nullify or cancel the requirements of naturalization for immigrants is completely false. Okay, let's see what else I would like to touch on today. Oh, another reason why reparations is, I believe, going to be owed or is owed to the descendants of American slave is when, okay, after 1965, all the immigrants came and everyone decided, they were automatically entitled to the 14th Amendment. What America, I don't know if most Americans realize this, is that using slavery of others for self gain is racist. I'll repeat that. Using slavery of other people for self gain is racist. If you did not participate or were a part of slavery in America, why are you mentioning this when you want to collect citizenship, birthright citizenship? Why are you mentioning slavery? When it comes to the conversation about reparations, you're quickly shouting that you were not a part of it. You were an immigrant. I'm not a part of slavery. But when it comes to collecting birthright citizenship, I'll take what the slaves got, sir. I'll take that. And that whole idea is a racist way of thinking about another group of human beings. I know people may not, I don't know what they're thinking, but it's not a very nice thing to do to the next person. To know that they're suffering and then try to profit off of someone else's suffering because you don't want to do the process that you have to do in order to be successful. So you use others. Okay, that's pretty much on par what the white slave owners did back in the day. The slavery was use the slaves for money, prosperity, and wealth. And today we have our country, America, has been inviting people from all over the world to enjoy the fruits and labor of slaves by granting or not granting, but not regulating or monitoring the acquisition of birthright citizenship to people that's not citizens. Um, so that's an issue, and I believe that's going to be one of the upcoming problems and a part of the issue with not paying reparations. You cannot use someone's suffering for your own self gain. It's kind of like me using the Native Americans story and their pain to get on the reservation and to benefit from the rights and benefits of Native Americans. That will be wrong for me to do, and it's wrong for others to do that to me. Okay, one last thing I want to talk about. Let me see here. Is there anything else I want to discuss today? Oh, yes. Let's talk about the lasting stigma of slavery on their descendants. Okay, the reason why everyone in America is my belief. This is my belief. They're in America and they believe that they do not need to respect slaves because slaves are this inhuman group of people and blah blah blah. Um, and so everyone decides let's all take a turn. That has had a lasting effect on Black Americans. The vitriol that Black Americans, descendants of slaves, have received when asking for redress of what happened and the violations against their civil rights as citizens for the last 100 years, the uh, the outcome of all of this massive immigration that affected the Black descendants of slaves politically, economically, and physically harm them. Um, a massive amount of people from strange lands with no ID at times can create a very dangerous living situation for your community. You find yourself getting into conversations with people that you've never seen or heard of before. And it's almost like you're stepping out your door and you don't recognize anyone in your neighborhood. And that's what has happened to the many of the urban inner city communities that was pretty much just trying to pull themselves by the bootstraps, like everyone asks us to do, and make something of themselves. But every time they get dumped on, their resources are depleted. A massive amount of people with no ID shows up in their community, no policing, and loss of political power. Now they find themselves outnumbered and outmanned by people that pretty much never applied to live in America. Um, so that's pretty much everything, and that's why I support reparations as a conservative person. I'm in support of reparations for the descendants of American slaves. I'm also in support of cutting the budget and also deporting the people that we do not need to pay for. That's a good way. That's a good way to start and to finance all of the things and the debts that America owes. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed this conversation. It's a tough conversation, but I believe this is a conversation that needs to be had. America is not a country where you can be afraid of, going to that next frontier, correcting the mistakes of the past. If anything, we learn from our history is having the courage to correct ourselves is what made us great. All right. It wasn't easy to get rid of slavery. Slavery was an economic powerhouse, but we did it. We got rid of it. It wasn't easy to get rid of Jim Crow and try to halfway respect the black citizens, but we didn't because we had the courage as a nation to correct our mistakes. We want to create a perfect union, and talking about the tough issues is how we get there. That's how we get there. Um, Thanks everyone for tuning in or not. I appreciate it. I'm grateful to be here, and I think everyone have a great day.